Hey, this is Joe at Graybench Electronics. Welcome back to the Teardown series where I take apart new and interesting pedals and show you what's going on inside. Today we have the Earthquaker Devices Zap Machine. So if you're not familiar, this is a discontinued distortion or fuzz pedal from Earthquaker. It's a silicon germanium transistor-based hybrid pedal. They were made in very limited numbers. This is version 2. There were 350 made of these, and they were made exclusively for sale by Primax. There is a version 1, and that was, I think, like 20 or so of those were made. I've been hunting for this pedal for a little over a year now. Earthquaker has a YouTube series called This Old Bench, where they go over a bunch of old and defunct Earthquaker pedals, and this was featured on, I believe, their second episode. And since then, I've had like a notification on my Reverb account for it. Being a germanium dirt pedal from a big company that I haven't heard of, it got me interested. So I've been waiting for this one for a little over a year. I've seen a couple come up for sale in that time, but I guess people just buy them up really quick because I've never been able to find one until this one. This one stuck around probably because it was priced considerably higher than the going rate. These go for about $500 or $600 right now on Reverb, and this one I picked up for $750. So overpaid a bit, but it is what it is. I wanted to get it for the channel and also figure out what's going on inside. So pretty standard Earthquaker. We've got 2 foot switches. One on the right here, it turns the pedal on and off for true bypass. On the left here is unique to the version 2. It has a channel switch, which is switching between sort of 2 different sides of dirt. The red side is the channel 2 or higher gain side, which is the right potentiometer over here. And then the green side is the left potentiometer, and that's a little lower gain. So more, you could sort of think of it like distortion versus fuzz. Bicolor LED, red and green. Indication LED was, I believe, white. Yeah, white LED for bypass. For controls, we already saw the green and red gain controls. We also have treble and bass, as well as a master level control. We are in a 1590 BB size enclosure, top mounted jacks, 1/4 inch jacks, and 9-volt DC jacks, Kobicon style with the internal nut. Knobs are what I think of as like the MXR style knobs. The enclosure itself is powder coated this nice mint green color, and then the graphics on the top are silkscreen black. On the back we have the information sticker, Earthquaker Devices Zap Machine. This is number 141 of 350 and made in Akron, Ohio. LEDs have the Fresnel lens bezel. I like to use these as well. Gives a nice effect when they're turned on. Disperses the light well. All right, that's it for the externals. Let's go ahead and crack the pedal open. All right, here is the Earthquaker Zap Machine PCB. Starting off on the offboard components, we have the enclosed plastic 1/4 inch jacks, the Amphenol or Neutrik style. The foot switches here are pretty heavy actuation pressure. They look like alpha with the red epoxy and the black housing, but they're not marked alpha, so not sure on manufacturer for those. LEDs, we have a single white LED for indication or bypass indication, a bicolor LED for the channel selection, red and green. Potentiometers are alpha 60mm PCB pin mount. Potentiometer values here, we have treble is linear 25K, level is linear 100K, bass is also linear 100K, and the 2 gain pots are audio 500Ks. The lower PCBs here are protected with a bit of double-sided foam. This works fine, and it's a quick and easy and cheap solution. The only reason I prefer the pot covers versus these is if the adhesive on these fails at some point in the future, which is a distinct possibility, and that foam falls out, you're going to have the problem you're trying to avoid in the first place, which is the back of the potentiometer shorting out to to the board. So the pot covers are just a plastic cover that wraps around the entire potentiometer, so there's no way for them to fall off. It would have to break. All right, so back on the top side for components, we have a bunch of axial capacitors here, electrolytic here. This is part of the base circuit. These big Mallory film caps, these are high voltage, like 400 volt caps. We also have these other film caps here, these silver film caps, not sure of a voltage rating on those. And then we have these maroon Panasonic style film caps as well. Those are radial electrolytics here. This one is part of the power filtering, and this one down here is a bypass for one of the transistor stages. The transistors here, we have two silicon transistors, as you can see, and a germanium here at the end, or at least a TO5, but it is in fact germanium. It is a 2N1302, Texas Instruments. The first transistor here is a 2N5089, and this one here is a 2N3904. All three are NPN. These two are silicon, germanium at the end. Trim pot here is a bias adjustment for the germanium transistor stage. They conveniently have a little bias test point there, which is good, and it's marked actually 4.5 volts, which will be approximately half the power, half the supply. The resistors, as you can see, are carbon composition resistors, and they appear to be 1/8 watt size, which is totally fine, plenty of power handling for a pedal. So that is it for a tour of the PCB. Next step, I'm going to trace out this pedal and we'll have a look at the circuit. All right, so here is the PCB I drew up for the Earthquaker Zap Machine version 2. So I am slightly less confident in this schematic than I am in most of the schematics I draw, and that's for a couple reasons. Number one, the solder mask on this PCB is sort of a flat black that reflects really poorly on light and is obscured easily by the flux that's left over from the soldering process, which is fine and normal, but you've seen I had to clean off a whole bunch of that to try and see the traces better, and it's just hard to see the traces under the solder mask, so that's made it more difficult. Also, these two potentiometers are obscuring traces underneath of them, and so I've had to very carefully get a light in there and try to see where stuff is going. I've checked it many times, probably 20 times now. Pretty much the front half of the schematic, or front 2/3, I feel very confident about. It's just this tail end that gets a little wonky and has some stuff I haven't seen before. Like I said, I've checked it a bunch of times. I feel maybe like 85% to 90% confident that this is correct, where I usually prefer to be like 99%. But anyway, like I said, I've checked a bunch of times, went away, came back, redrew it a bunch of times, and buzzed it out. I think it's correct, but I'm going to move on as if it's correct, and worst case, maybe next week we'll put it together on a breadboard and see if it actually works. I mean, there's nothing looking at it that wouldn't work, but anyway, let's put forward, assuming it's correct, and next week we'll see and we'll go from there. So coming in, the switch would be here. I didn't draw that, but we have our input here. 100 picofarad cap to ground is going to get rid of some extra high frequency stuff you don't need. 47K resistor into the base control. So this kind of base control is typically called a input cap blend control, and basically you're setting up a potentiometer here between two different values of input caps. Larger value is going to give you more base frequencies because you're adjusting where that frequency cutoff, or your cutoff frequency is for the high pass filter that is created with a cap and a resistor to ground. When you push it one way, it's going to send more signal through the bigger filter cap, giving you more bass. If you push it the other way, it's going to put more signal through the 10 nanofarad, which will give you a higher frequency roll off and less bass. Over here to our first transistor stage, we have a voltage divider bias transistor. This is the 5089 NPN. This is a pretty standard setup for Earthquaker. You'll see this design in a bunch of their pedals. Coming out of that, we have the 100 nanofarad filter cap into the two gain controls. The gain potentiometers, 500K audio pots, they both have a 1K tail resistor so that when you wind the gain control all the way down, it doesn't mute the pedal. And then here is the second pole of the channel switch, switching between the two pots. Output from that through a resistor and a cap into our next stage. So you can think of this portion as like a fuzz face. So you have your first stage here. This is the 3904 silicon. The third pole of the channel switch is switching between having a 1K emitter resistor and just grounding the emitter like you would see in a fuzz face. And then this here, this is like the 100K, the typical 100K feedback resistor, but in this case it's a 220K and a 1 nanofarad bypass cap. For the collector of the 3904, there's a 22K, normally it'd be like 33K for a fuzz face, but that's fine, it's just tweaking depending on what the designer wanted. DC coupling into the germanium, the 1302 NPN, 2.2K emitter resistor, and a 47 microfarad bypass cap around that. And then for power, we have a 1K and then a 20K trim pot to adjust the bias at the collector here. Now going around the 1K here, we do have a 10 nanofarad cap, and I'm not certain what this is doing. I would assume it has something to do with noise suppression for the bipolar or bicolor LED. Some of these can be noisy and have like a weird buzzing or oscillation sound put into the circuit. And I'm guessing that that's what this cap is doing, something to suppress that. Not certain though. We do have a 470 ohm current limiting resistor for those two LEDs. And then over here is the 12K and then the LED for the bypass illumination. Coming out of the germanium transistor stage, we have the 1 microfarad cap, 12K resistor. This treble control or tone control I have seen on other Earthquaker pedals. I believe the special cranker has a setup pretty much just like this. So it's a treble control with a cap on the wiper, and as you adjust this, it's going to send more of the signal through the 10 nanofarad to ground, which is going to be a low pass filter, so a treble control. And then out here, this is just the part I'm not certain about. So 1 microfarad cap into this little circuit with a sort of a resistor divider with a 1 nanofarad cap to ground there, another 470 picofarad right at the output, which isn't uncommon, and then sort of a 6.8 nanofarad bypass cap around all that, and then a pretty standard volume, 100K volume pot at the end. If anybody's seen anything like this in an Earthquaker pedal or just an audio circuit in general, just let me know. I just haven't seen anything like that, and that's why I question my schematic just a little bit. Just to complete it, as far as power, we have 9 volts input, of course, positive 9 volts, 4001 rectifier diode to ground, which is giving us polarity protection, 100 microfarad filter cap, and 100 ohm resistor, filter resistor. So that is the schematic for the Zap Machine V2. Now, the Earthquaker This Old Bench episode that I mentioned showed the version 1 of this pedal that I believe both people in that video said that they preferred the sound of version 1 versus this pedal, the version 2. And so I've gone ahead and drawn up a schematic using screenshots from that video and just taking an educated guess based on version 2, what version 1 probably is, and just sort of cross references to the schematic and the components that were shown inside that pedal. So this is my guess, and I'm putting big asterisks out there, guess, as to what version 1 might be. It starts off pretty similar with the bass control, basically the same thing. First stage, pretty similar. Single gain control, as the version 1 had, only 1 gain control. And missing some components around here, like an extra resistor in this line. Obviously the switch is gone. 3904, there is no 1K emitter resistor, although there might be. It depends a little bit on the setup. For instance, if this 1K, if they omitted this, which you don't technically need it if you are careful about the bias, you don't necessarily need this 1K here, in which case this could be here on the 3904. I can't tell that unless I actually see one of these pedals. But I'm going to guess that since this is sort of fuzz space based, this would be grounded, the emitter will be grounded here on a fuzz face, so I'm going to guess that that's what it is. 100K, this is the standard fuzz face value, 100K feedback resistor, 1K emitter resistor, which is sort of like the pot wound all the way up for a fuzz face with a 47 microfarad bypass, 1 microfarad out, and then the volume control over here with the 470 tail resistor. I'm not certain about this tail resistor. I'm also not certain about the value of the LED current limiting resistor. Those are not crucial. The 470 here is just going to keep you from muting the pedal if you wind the volume all the way down. And 12K is something that you would probably adjust on your own depending on the LEDs you have. But the circuit here, this is my best guess based on what I saw from the video and what we've seen in version 2 as to what the version 1 circuit looks like. Side note, if anybody has a version 1 and wants to send it to me, I can confirm the schematic or not. I'll be very gentle with it, so hit me up. graybenchelec@gmail.com. So yeah, that is the schematic for the Earthquaker devices, Zap Machine version 2. Let's go ahead and put the pedal back together. All right, I hope you enjoyed the teardown of the Earthquaker Devices Zap Machine. If you have any questions or recommendations for a pedal you want to see on a future teardown episode, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate you hitting the like button and subscribing, and hit the notification bell if you want to know when I make a new video. I'm Joe from Graybench Electronics. Thanks for watching.